Hey makers, this is Dhruvin and today I am going to talk about one of the most interesting enterprise level Power Automate video. This is one of the most requested topic in one of my YouTube comment as well, that what is service principal and how we can configure our Power Automate flow with the service principal. This is what we are going to talk about in today's episode. So without further delay, let's get started. But before that, if you haven't followed me on my Twitter and Instagram so far, do follow me. The links to follow are available in the description box. Now, let me first talk about the today's session agenda, what I'm going to cover up end to end or today. First of all, I'm going to talk about what is service principal and why do we require flow to be configured with the service principal. What type of flow you can consider for the service principal configuration into your real life project. First, let's talk about that. After that, I'm going to talk about how you can set up your service principal from scratch in the Power Platform. After that, we'll talk about what are the permissions required for service principal in order to execute the overall Power Automate flow. Also, we will add that particular user within your Power Platform account in order to run your flow with the application user. At the end, we will build one Power Automate flow with the service principal, and we will also talk about the licensing implications on the service principal as well. At the end, we will perform end-to-end testing and test around what is the difference between normal flow versus service principal flow. So without further delay, let's get started and talk about overall things in detail. So first of all, let me talk about what is service principal. A service principal is basically non-human identity. Basically, it's not a user account. What is user account? User account is, let's say for an example, in your organization, you are having your email address, right? And that particular account is associated with your Power Automate. Let's say my account is Dhruvin @powerplatformtrainings.com. Now this powerplatformtrainings.com basically the human identity which is tied to Dhruvin. And now when Dhruvin is building the flow, it is creating with that name identity, right? Now similar way what happen here is at the organizational level, generally when we are building the Power Platform solution, they are having service account created. So service account is also many times a user identity. Like sometimes we are creating like this svc-powerplatform@powerplatformtrainings.com. Right? So this is nothing but another user account, right? The license is tied to it. Now, service principal is slightly different than the user account, right? So basically it is the Azure Active Directory's application. Okay, we are considered as an application user. So basically it doesn't have the username and password. Basically it has the client ID and client secret. Basically that client ID and client secret is something which we are using for our automation. Alright, so basically service principal is that one. Now you will get a better understanding once we create the service principal from the scratch. Also, let me tell you one more important thing. Usually at the organizational level or industry level, service principal is something which you don't need to create as a developer. Most of the time your admins have already configured the service principal at your tenancy level. So generally before you create the service principal, maybe just check with your admins if they already have service principal in place. So in that case, you can leverage the same service principal for the flow development. Now over here, as we are going from the scratch, I'm going to talk about how to set up the service principal completely from scratch. But before that, let me talk about one more interesting thing, that when to use service principal application user. So this is the official Microsoft documentation. I'm going to share this link as well with you in the chat window. So basically when you are having the mission critical flows that service departmental or enterprise wide scenarios are being used for those type of flows, you can always use the service principal. Now service principal come up with some amazing functionality. Basically, let's say for an example, here you don't need to worry about that if the person's credentials are expired, or maybe the flow owner is leaving the organization, or maybe the thing is that licensing as well you don't need to worry about, because those licenses are assigned to the flow level. Alright, so generally basically what happen here is this type of scenarios when you are having for the mission critical applications or flows, at the time you can leverage the user principal. At the time, even if the user is leaving the organization and all, you don't need to worry about anything. Second scenario is generally for DevOps pipeline, when we are moving our solution across dev or test or production, at the time also we are migrating or moving the solution as a service principal, as an application user. We are not tying any kind of user identity with the solution deployment. At the time also, this service principal is a very useful. If you have watched my completely Power Platform deployment pipeline step-by-step series, basically in that series as well, I talked about one of the concept called service principal. Okay, so similar way within the Power Automate as well, many times we are configuring with the service principal. Also, I have seen this scenario that many times Dynamics 365 people are using the service principal flow drastically because it has so much licensing advantages of that. Also, it is having the separate bucket for the overall Power Platform request that we are making from our Power Automate. We will talk about that in a while, but first let's get started with our journey for creating the service principal from the scratch, and after that we will attach that service principal with our Power Automate flow. So first of all, what I'm doing here is I'm head over myself to my Power Automate flow. For that, I'm just opening my Power Platform Admin Center at this point. And first of all, let me open up my Azure portal over here. So here I have opened my Microsoft Entra portal. Now over here, let's click on Microsoft Entra ID from here. Now over here from the left navigation, click on the app registration, using which you can set up your service principal. Let's click on that. Once you click on that, click on the new registration from here. Now provide any name over here. So I'm just providing over here like Power Automate Service Principal. And let's say this is my dev environment. So I'm just creating dev service principal over here. You can set up the different service principal for different environment. Now I'm just clicking the option same as it is and click on register at this point. Once you register, your application is created. Now next step you need to perform is you need to generate the client secret for your service principal, and you need to assign the permission to your service principal. For that, first of all, go to the API permissions from here. Now let's click on add permission over here. Once you click on add permission, basically you will be able to see Dynamics CRM over here. Although we are doing this for Power Automate or Power Platform, still we need to select the Dynamics CRM from here. Now let's click on that, and over here let's select user impersonation over here. Now click on add permission over here. Once you add the permission, basically it will show you this permission added over here. Already when we started, already graph permission was already added earlier. You don't need to do any extra step on top of that. Now the simple thing is that you need to click on grant admin consent over here. Now here my company is Power Platform Trainings, so it is showing me Power Platform Trainings, but in your case it will show you your company name over here. Now this is also require administrative privileges in order to grant the permission. So make sure you always follow up with your administrator over here. If you do not have any permission at this point, maybe you will get an error. But now here I am having the full privileges, so I am clicking on admin consent confirmation. As soon as you grant admin consent, basically it will show you that it granted successfully. It's all good. You have granted the API permission successfully. Next immediate step that you need to perform here is go to the certificate and secret section. Now over here, click on new client secret. Now I'm clicking on that. Now provide any description over here. So I'm providing as client secret. Now you need to define that when your client secret is expire. I mean, it is like your password, right? So let's say for an example, if you think that you don't want your to expire your client certificate for 24 months, maybe you can set up highest. Here I'm just setting up 90 days. Depending on your organization policy, you can change the client secret value. Now whenever you change the client secret value, at the time you need to update the client secret value within your Power Automate flow as well. So make sure that you select the duration wisely over here. Let me select 3 months from here and click on add over here. And basically this has set up the client certificate for me. Now the only thing that you need to do here is from here copy the value of the client secret. I'm copying the value over here, And now this value is something which you need to preserve in some of the notepad or any other file that you are having. So what I'm doing here is I am having one notepad file and where I am just picking up the client secret over here. So let's pick it up, client secret over here. Alright, so I'm just pulling up that value over here. Alright, now what I'm doing here is after that what you need to do is go to the overview section of the same Azure application. Now make sure you select the client ID as well from here, and you require tenant ID as well from here. Let's copy both the value for ourselves. So I'm copying this value and going here and keeping the client ID over here. Now make sure you don't forget to measure this particular value, otherwise in the mid of the flow development you need to come here and grab that value over here. Alright, so I'm grabbing both the values over here. So 3 values I pick it up from here: client secret, client ID and tenant ID. Okay, all good, all perfect. Now what would be the next step? The next step is your service principal is set up successfully. Now this service principal name you need to copy and keep it in your notepad as well. Now this service principal is something you are going to consume at your Power Platform level. Now how to utilize this as a Power Platform level? Let's have a quick look around that. For that, simply go to your make.powerapps.com and open your Power Platform Admin Center. I'm opening my admin center over here. Now first of all, go to the environment where you want to consume this thing. I'm going to click on manage option over here and going to environment, and I have one of the environment called Power Apps Batch 22. I'm just going over there and simply I need to add that user inside this environment. For that, I'm just going to the user section over here. Click on see all users. Once you click on see all users, you are able to see a separate section called app user list. Click on that. Once you click on app user list, basically you are redirected to the application user section. Now click on new app user. Now simply here you need to add your service principal. Over here it will show you all the Azure application that you have registered at your tenant level. Here I'm searching my application that I just created, Power Automate SPDev. So this is the Azure Active Directory app that we just registered. Now select that and click on add over here. Now simply click on business unit over here. So simply search for org and it will show you the business unit for this tenancy. Now over here you need to assign the role for your service principal. Now it depends on your organization that what kind of role you want to assign. If you have created your own custom role, you can define your own custom role from here. Here what I'm doing here is I'm assigning the highest role at the organizational level, which is system administrator level role, to work with the Power Platform level. So I'm just simply providing the system admin role, but here I'm giving you the heads up over here. Let's say if you don't want to go with the system administrator like a highest privileges, you can go with the list privileges as well by creating your own custom role. Now how to create the custom role, it's up to you. Alright, now I'm just selecting system administrator from here and now click on save, and let's add that particular role over here in this environment. So this is what I have created over here, and now let's click on create button. As soon as you click on create button, that application user has been added at your Power Platform Admin Center level, and here you can see that Power Automate SPDev user has been added successfully. Alright, so this is how you need to add your service principal to your environment level, and you need to grant the system administrator role to it. Perfect, looks all good to me so far. And you have observed one thing, that whenever you create any service principal, it always add hashtag before the service principal name. So whenever you can see hash before any application user, at the time you need to consider that this is an app user or application user or service principal. Alright, so it is added successfully. Now what you need to do as the next step, you have added that successfully, and now let's go to Power Automate and build one Power Automate flow over there. Alright, so let's get started with that particular journey. So here I am on my screen, and this is one of the Dataverse table I am having. In this Dataverse table, I am going to make an entry using the Power Automate, and this time we are going to use service principal. But before that, we need to understand the clear difference between the entry that we are making with the service principal versus user account. For that, I have created a simple flow for add a leave into Dataverse table. Now remember one thing, this service principal concept is usually useful for Dataverse, or if you are having any Dynamics 365 or CRM flow to implement, you can use this particular concept. If you think that service principal concept is utilized for SharePoint level flow and all, at that point, no, it cannot be useful for SharePoint and any other connector of flow. Basically, this concept is usually useful for Dataverse only flow. Now, let's get started. So for that, I'm doing here, like this is one of my manual trigger flow. And let me just add one Dataverse section over here called create a row. So I'm just using Dataverse and I'm just using an action add a row. Okay. So what I'm doing here is clicking on add a new row. Now over here in this table, I'm just selecting my leaves table over here. All right. And now here I'm just supplying the manual title at this point, title 1. Okay. And now let me just do one thing here. Like let me check the connection. So if you look at the connection over here at this point and click on change connection reference, basically right now it is showing you that current connection is configured with my account Dhruvin @powerplatformtrainings.com. This is my email address. Now using this user, we are creating an entry. So first let's test this entry as is. So I'm just doing the test and publish the flow. So I'm just manually publish and test the flow. As soon as you publish this thing out, basically it will start creating an entry into the leaves table. Let's wait for a moment to execute it. I'm just clicking on run flow from here. Run the flow. And my flow ran successfully over here. Now let me check the entry into Dataverse table. So here is my Dataverse table. I'm clicking on the refresh button over here. As soon as you check that, you can see that created by is Dhruvin, and we just created this entry right now. Now let me do one more thing here. Let me edit this flow now. And now let me just open the Dataverse as a service principal. And for that, what I'm doing here is I'm selecting the Dataverse section over here, going to the connection reference option. This is the modern view. That's why you are able to see connection reference over here. Classic view, generally you are having the 3 dots and you can see the connection reference over there. Now simply clicking on change connection reference. Click on add new. And now this time provide any name to your connection. So I'm providing over here Dataverse service principal as my connection name. Authentication type, let's select with service principal. And now here you need to supply the client ID, client secret and tenant ID. So already in our previous step when we created the service principal, we have copied all this information. So let me supply all the information one by one. So I supplied client ID. Now I'm supplying the client secret over here. Make sure you don't have any space or anything in the client secret. And at the end, I need to supply my tenant ID as well. So I'm supplying my tenant ID. And now let's click on create new. As soon as it authenticated, it will create a new connection for you. And here I am. You can see that my new connection reference has been created. Now let me change the title a little bit over here. So I'm just providing the title as test service principal. Okay. Now let me publish my flow and let me test out this particular flow and see how it will go. Clicking on the manual test over here and let the flow to run over here with the service principal. I'm just clicking on test button. Run the flow. So when you are trying to run the flow, basically it is showing you this kind of error. Cannot share the properties of underline shared command service for apps 1. Okay, it is showing you this type of error. Don't worry, you don't need to do anything over here. Go to cancel, because now we are trying to run the flow with the service principal, right? So first of all, what we need to do here is let's go here, and this is my solution flow. All right, so first of all, let's change the ownership of the flow from here. So over here, you just can see here the co-owner option available over here, as well as if you look at the bottom section, here there is an option run only user. Let's go there. Over here, use this Dataverse service principal connection, that is perfect. Make sure you are checking that particular thing. And now what you need to do here is you need to change the owner of the flow. For that, let's do one thing. Here there is a co-owner option, and there is an option over here called set primary owner. Click on that. Let's remove Dhruvin's name from here and let's add our service principal over here. So what was our service principal name? I mean your app ID. Let's provide this Power Automate SP Day. I'm supplying that same thing over here, and basically it will add that application user over here. Now click on save, and now click on change owner. Once the owner is changed, this is how it looks like. It will take some moments in order to reflect the latest owner change. And you can see that owner has been changed over here. You can refresh your screen over here. Now, what we need to do is click on the edit option over here. And now let's test the flow run over here. So I'm again going to click on test, and let's do the manual testing over here. And let's see how it will load. Click on run the flow. Click on done. And here I am. My flow ran completely successfully. Now let's check the Dataverse entry over here. I'm refreshing my stuff over here. And now you can see that this is I just entered. And now you can see here the created by is showing over here as Power Platform SP Dev. And you can see hashtag before that, which means that it is an app user and it's a service principal, right? So your flow ran successfully with the service principal, and this is how it is showing to you now. Now the question arises in our mind that, okay, you have run this flow with the service principal. So what are the licenses needed over here to run the flow as a service principal? Now let's uncover that particular part over here. So this is basically the official documentation of Microsoft, where they have mentioned about the licensing requirement for service principal. So basically this is what clearly articulated over here. A service principal application user is a non-interactive user. Obviously it's an app user, right? So it can't have the user license associated with it. That is correct, right? Because generally Power Automate Premium license or Power Apps Premium license, those licenses are associated with the user, right? But this is what is an app user, right? So you can't assign those licenses over there, right? Now, this is clearly articulated over here that premium service principal application user own flows need a Power Automate process or Power Automate per flow license, right? So we know that in the world of Power Platform, specifically in the Power Automate world, we are having the different licensing. Let me just open up the official Microsoft licensing guide. So this is the official Microsoft licensing guide. You can always download it from the official Microsoft site. Alright, now according to that particular documentation, basically you either require this per flow plan, which is $100 per flow per month and minimum 5 licenses you need to purchase, or you can go with the process license. So for process level, the different licensing are available. So either you can have any kind of process license or you can have per flow license. Any one of them will work for the service principal. Okay, so basically this is like a baseline that you need to consider. Also, there is some more information around here that basically Power Automate process or Power Automate per flow license is required, right? If you are running from Dynamics 365 context, at that time, it's exempted from the need of Power Automate process or Power Automate per flow license. So basically, if your Power Automate flow in Dynamics 365 interface, then it's a different story. Okay, and when it falls under Dynamics 365 and when you are using any kind of premium connectors over there, then what are the need over here, like, okay, when you are using the service principal flow with the Dynamics 365 or service principal in context of Power Apps or service principal in terms of Power Automate license, how much request limit is that? They have provided that information over here as well. So you can always look out that information for the more detailing. All right, so this is all about the licensing. Okay, so if you think that, okay, service principal I'm using and I'm just going with the Power Automate premium license, no, if you are having Power Automate premium, you can't set up the service principal. Okay, and this is whole story about the premium connectors. Okay, now the thing is that, let's say for an example, so the baseline here is you need to always go with per flow plan or maybe process license, right, which is expensive. And that's the reason many times at community level as well as where you are making the decision at the enterprise level, this is more debatable question, because what happen here is, by this way your service principal implementation becoming more costly compared to your normal implementation that you are doing. But yeah, if you have a need of really having the service principal to be implemented with your Power Automate flow, this is the go-to way inside the world of Power Automate. Hope this video is helping you and valuing your time. So that's all I wanted to talk about, at least for today's class, related service principal and Power Automate. Hope this video is helping you and valuing your time. If so, maybe please hit thumbs up and subscribe my channel, because it's free for you, but it motivates me in lots of other ways. Alright, so yeah, that's pretty much it. And don't forget to follow me on my Twitter and Instagram. If you are looking for any live training underneath my company, powerplatformtrainings.com, you can always visit our website for upcoming training information. Next training program is for model driven application, which is starting in the month of November. So we are going to start our booking soon on that. So stay tuned. All the links are available in the description as well. And if you just wanted to join our WhatsApp broadcast for all the future training, the links are available in the description box. You can have a look on that. Also, if you are looking for any premium courses on my channel, this is the go-to playlist. I mean, we have launched so far this many of premium courses. Other courses are also going to be added within the same playlist. So thank you so much for all the members who has already enrolled and who are planning to enroll over there. The prices for even the premium plan is very, very cheap. It just less than a medium size of pizza cost. So you can always have it over there and watch the premium content over there. Alright, so with that note, this is Dhruvin signing off. See you in the next episode with some amazing content. Till then, have a great day. Goodbye.